This is Audible.
Construction Project Management. How the Great Ones Do It. Written by Joe Egan. Narrated by Joe Egan. Chapter 1. The Common Traits of Those Who Were the Most Successful. Persistence, and risk-taking. It's the will to succeed. Not the unreasonable, overly optimistic Pollyanna approach, just a strong drive. Competition is such that second place is reserved for the first loser. Survival requires the resiliency of a rubber band snapping back from being stretched. You can only allow a brief period of disappointment and frustration after being bested from a project award before you must extend your efforts again in attempt to get the next construction project. It hurts to try hard and still experience failure, and the cycle can be relentless. On the other hand, the business gets you hooked on the reward of hard work, pride in accomplishment, and valued relationships. Successful contractors realize that customer loyalty is not automatically granted. It is earned. They understand that project management is very important. They know that their best strategic plan includes respect and problem solving, and the worst strategic plan is finger pointing and betrayal. They are also mature enough to realize that problems do not go away, but do provide a great opportunity to look good when they are solved. Meanwhile, your competitors are always waiting in the wings. They watch for you to make a misstep. They wait for the opportunity to fly in after you have crashed and take away your customers. Also, the more you know, the more you realize how ignorant you are. Every day, new discoveries transform what was once exciting and nearly unbelievable into obsolescence. I recall when, after spending my first 7 years in construction, I reached a level of knowing enough to be dangerous. I also learned early on that projects that start well usually end well, and projects that start badly usually end badly. Getting off on the wrong foot makes it hard to get back on the right one. Good or bad outcomes are many times caused by the manifestation of the self-fulfilling prophecy. This occurs when you carry the attitude and act in a manner to justify your predicted outcome. So if you believe the project team does not deserve your respect, you will treat them accordingly, and your thinking will be confirmed. On the other hand, if you believe the project team is your only avenue for success, then you will treat them accordingly, and your thinking will be confirmed. One prophecy is doomed for failure, and the other prophecy is destined for success. Success is also about the constant creation and achievement of expectations. Setting expectations leads to motivation. Achieving expectations fosters pride and confidence to start the cycle over again. Create, achieve, create, achieve. How boring would it be if you no longer had any goals for yourself? High expectations allow you to separate from the pack and make them try to catch up to you. They are self-authored for the purpose of either directing yourself or influencing others. When you achieve your high expectations in relation to your customers, the result is an enhanced perception of the concept of the customer. Your customer becomes not just some unknown person who pays you money, but rather a respected person you look forward to talking to. Many successful customer engagements evolve into close personal friendships. High expectation is a discipline that keeps you from the temptation of just doing okay. Keeping up with your competitors, but not doing anything better, will eventually lead to failure. On the subject of negotiation, successful negotiators realize they may need to give up something they want in order to get what they need. And the same mindset is required on the other side of the negotiation table. During a construction project, it is a certainty that unforeseen conditions and situations arise. Often they lead to some sort of disagreement or conflict because people on both sides have different opinions, perspectives, and expectations. There are many ways to resolve such conflicts, including negotiation, arbitration, mediation, or litigation. Keep in mind that litigation is sometimes the same as scorched earth. Of all the methods to resolve conflict, negotiation is the most efficient and of mutual benefit. A negotiation is simply a discussion intended to produce a middle ground agreement over a dispute. Negotiation gets you through the problem. Both sides may not get what they want, but they do get what they need most. Both sides have respect for the existing relationship and want to preserve it. This works best when you are prepared to count to 10 or take a break outside without slamming the hinges off the door. It's a dance, with both sides knowing it takes two to tango. Unconventional thinking. It doesn't cost anything to think in unconventional ways to arrive at new assessments. I coined the term unconventional assessment thinking, UAT. It's about getting out of the rut of your usual business mode and allowing yourself to see your world from a higher elevation. Permit your head to absorb rather than deflect new ideas and opportunities that often blaze past you while you're either too busy or stuck in the rut mode. Maybe it's because we tend to think more about stabilization and security and not enough about growth and opportunity. But it was unconventional assessment thinking that got us through the rut of thinking the world was flat and led to countless inventions. If you think like everyone else, all you can expect is to match what they are thinking and doing. No higher or better. Get on the other side of the fence and observe what others can't see or refuse to see because it is difficult, challenging, and uncomfortable. After being turned away from Toyota Motor Corporation, Soichiro Honda was not dissuaded. Rather, he embraced possibility and opportunity and formed Honda Corporation. He said, "We see the world not as it is, but as it could be. We see the world through the eyes of dreamers." In conclusion, perhaps most importantly, successful contractors are trusted and trusting. Yes, you can be financially successful by not being trustworthy, but that is not what defines success in this book. Instead, being untrustworthy is one of the main prerequisites for failure. Chapter 2. Leadership. Leadership can't be faked or granted. Instead, it is earned and based on ability to inspire. It means you are in front and have people who want to and are willing to follow you.
And I was loving it. But things changed for us when we hit a turnover of around 650k. For some reason, we just completely stopped growing. I was selling what I could, but the business flatlined for a few years. We didn't have the right processes or people in place to take on much more work. So psychologically, we were holding back. This started to become a problem once I had kids and needed a bigger home. I needed to earn more money, significantly more, but the business was no longer meeting my needs. I started to grow resentful of it. My business partner and best friend was quite happy with how things were, and I can understand why. It wasn't stressful, and we were earning enough to meet his needs. He had no reason to want to grow. But for me, with a growing family and an inbuilt drive to make this business a huge success, I was growing frustrated. As the years slowly ticked on, with growth going nowhere, things came to a head. We were now both spending more than the profits the business could realistically generate, and we were slowly but surely driving it into the ground. I made the difficult decision to split from my business partner. I can't stress enough how emotionally challenging this was, as we were, and still are, extremely close, so it felt like a betrayal in many ways. This is one of the reasons it took me so long to make the decision when I should have done it years earlier. I knew we couldn't continue on as we were, and we had both started to move in different directions. I wanted to make the business much bigger. He, understandably, didn't want the unnecessary pressure. So in 2013, we split. I bought my partner out of the company and was then free to take it in any direction I wanted. I was now financially committed to making things happen, as I'd had to take out a large loan to cover the buyout. It was a risk, as we had run the company into a bit of debt, but I was convinced I could turn it around, cover the loan payments, and make the business profitable again. I remember feeling excited, but also found it daunting that the failure or success of the business was now all down to me. At this point, I'd already consumed a lot of books on how to grow a business, and it was time to start putting the things I'd learned into action. One by one, I slowly implemented strategies and started to see changes. Sales were increasing without spending any more on marketing, and my profit margins were growing. The first year after the split, I'd managed to turn over nearly 700k, which wasn't bad considering I was on my own and things were only just starting to settle. I must admit though, I was working extremely hard and putting in long hours, but I was building a valuable foundation that would set me up well going forward. The next financial year, things really started moving. I was now being viewed as a bigger company and started pitching for larger contracts. The contacts I had nurtured over the years had also grown and were taking on bigger projects, and I was now their preferred supplier. I needed to take on more admin staff to cope with the workload, so I converted my garage into an office and we all crammed in there. Looking back now, it must have been an awful working environment compared to the offices I now have, but at the time, it was exciting. New contracts were being won, and our turnover was increasing month on month. Very suddenly, I started to see the fruits of my labour, and that financial year I hit 1.2 million in sales. We had increased revenue by 70% in just 1 year. This was a huge jump in both turnover and profits. All the effort I'd put into laying a good foundation the previous year had now paid dividends. I couldn't believe how easy it had been to smash through the £1 million mark once I'd put the right systems in place. And once I'd sailed past £1 million in revenue, I had further funds to invest in building a great team around me. This then gave me more freedom and money to take holidays and enjoy some stress-free time with my family. Having a great team was key to growing even further, and once we had passed the £1 million barrier, it was easy to get to 2 million, then 3 million and beyond in the years that followed. Our growth was staggering, and that brought a whole host of new problems that I had to learn to deal with and overcome. I'd grown to a large company quite quickly, and it seemed I was taking on new staff every few months. Unfortunately, some of my hires were awful. I had a member of staff steal money from me, and one even stole a lucrative contract worth hundreds of thousands of pounds for himself.
The benefit of both experienced and inexperienced public officials alike. It is written for elected officials, for appointed officials, and for staff who are charged with bringing a public project from concept to reality. Many of the points discussed are equally applicable to private construction, but we focus primarily on public construction and its intricacies because it is the public projects that are often headed up by less experienced project managers. Unfortunately, there are altogether too many public construction horror stories, and I've seen many of them in my work as an attorney. A more basic and comprehensive primer is needed for those public officials headed into the realm of a new construction project. This book will provide practical advice on issues that you'll face before, during, and after construction. There will be a few dives into technical issues and language concerns, but it will be written in plain language and will only dive as deep as you need to go in order to protect your interest during the completion of your project.
Chapter 1. Fundamentals of Construction Management. Goals of a Construction Manager. 1. Lead the team. 2. Quality control. 3. Control costs. 4. Maintain the schedule. It takes a ton of technical knowledge, leadership, and skill to manage a construction site. It also takes patience, a great attitude, and a little luck. Competent construction managers, or CMs, are strong leaders with above-average managerial skills and a vast technical knowledge of the means and methods of their trade partners. CMs must wear multiple hats on the job. They lead the workers on their project and manage the job site. They set expectations for quality and maintain cost controls. They are also responsible for maintaining the production schedule. The first key characteristic of a CM is leadership. We do not manage people, we lead them. Depending on the size of the project, there could be hundreds of tradespeople working simultaneously on different tasks or in different locations of the same project.
This is Construction Law Today, the podcast of the American Bar Association's Forum on Construction Law. Construction Law Today is a podcast about current topics in American construction law. Your host.
We're here for this episode of Your Passive Audio. We're here with Steve. We're actually currently on site at the minute, which is probably one of the weirdest places I've ever recorded. We're in the middle of a building site, and we've got the podcasting equipment set up on a wheelbarrow, and we're here with Steve. How are you going today, Steve?
Yeah, very well.
Cool. We're going to talk to Steve about his journey with passive houses and talk about not only his build, but the build that we're currently sitting in next door at the minute. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your journey with passive houses.
Yeah, so we bought our house about 3 years ago. It was an old standard 3-bedroom house in Canberra, brick veneer. We were moving back into where I grew up, obviously very keen to build a sustainable house. I came across passive house. I'm in the military, so I was over in the desert, a lot of time on my hand, and came up with this, found this passive house concept, thought it was fantastic, didn't actually think it would be achievable in Australia, but I wanted to take pieces of it and try to make it as sustainable house as we possibly could. Bought this house, and then just very fortunately, Kevin Swain that owned the house that we're sitting in right now and was a builder and a passive house consultant, so the stars aligned, and I told him what I wanted to do. Initially we were thinking renovation and try to achieve the passive house principles. The first hammer I put into the house was into a door jamb that fell apart. It was termites. We had our first child on the way about 5 months from him coming into the world, and I thought, well, termites could be all through this house, so it all needs to come out now. So we stripped it bare. Through that process, we were just talking and working with Kev. We came up with the idea of let's have a crack at passive house or the NFIT, so the passive house renovation, and it all pretty much exactly how you should do a passive house. It all happened on the fly. Made it up. No, I wouldn't say made it up as we went, but we were certainly coming up with ideas and ways to do things as we went. And without Kev, it wouldn't have got anywhere near to where we are right now. But it was kind of an evolving process to get to where we are. Okay.
So was it a big decision to, just in my mind, get this correctly, is you decided not to retrofit the property, but it was a full knockdown and rebuild?
No, we didn't knock down. So we stripped it down to the frame.
Yep.
So took the roof tiles off, the old roof tiles off, pulled the brick veneer down. I didn't want to go a full knockdown rebuild. It may have been cheaper, who knows. It was just I wanted to use what we could. There was still a perfectly good slab there, perfectly good hardwood frame that we could use, trusses. So we used that frame and the shell of the old house, and then we put an extension out the back of that. So yeah.
Cool. So what was because you said that obviously it was an ongoing process. What was like some of the biggest learnings from that process?
Oh, wow. I think we certainly didn't reinvent the wheel by any means. I took a lot of what was happening over in Europe and America and brought it back to apply to here. we had the constraints of the old house, so we actually raised the old roof by 300 mil, and that was Kev's idea, and Kev did all that. Obviously, I helped him, but that was a bit of a wild adventure. That one, jacking up a roof, but that gave us the ability to insulate the slab, and then get a service cavity in for all our HRV and all that. So without that raising of the roof, you wouldn't have been able to achieve what we achieved. So working with the old frame, or the old part of the house, was the hardest part. And it would have been easier if we had just knocked it all down and gone again. But that's obviously not what we chose to do, so we worked with that.
Yeah, cool. I feel like I've raised a few roofs in my time, but never physically.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was an interesting, interesting few days.
So how long have you been living in the house now? Well, when was it completed, and how long have you been?
Good question. I don't actually know. Well, I'd say close to 3 years now. We've been living in it. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the biggest benefit that you found of living in a passive house since you've been in there?
Number one, comfort. You never ever live in anything other than a passive house once you've lived in one. Not voluntarily anyway.
Yeah.
It's -6 outside. In the morning you wake up, there's ice on the outside of your windows, and you're walking around in shorts and t-shirt inside. That part of it is what you do it for. Energy bills, like the first year I was in the house, was a $37 energy bill. We've got a 5.4 kilowatt system on top of the roof, north facing, so not a massive system, but that speaks for itself. So you're looking at the rising energy prices all around the country at the moment. Well, I guess they fluctuate, but we're not spending thousands of dollars a year on gas or electricity. We're spending under 100. So the bit of extra money we put into the house for triple glazed windows, wrapping, and insulation, we'll get that back in the years that we're going to spend here. And then I guess on top of the comfort financials, it's with young children, you don't have to worry about dressing them for night, sleeping and stuff. It sits there, plus or minus 3 degrees kind of thing. So nice. I guess that goes into the comfort part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. No, that sounds great. And then I think one other question, because obviously, like when you look at other countries, for example, Europe in particular, you see that passive house technology has been really embraced, and it's everywhere, right down to fire stations and schools and supermarkets and all of these things that are now really kind of latching onto passive house technology and using it to create these kind of sustainable and preferable environments. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Australia's not really taken to it as quickly, or is just now picking that up and is going to be running with it? Because
I think the building industry in this country is a joke. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I think we're stuck in the Stone Ages. It's part of the industry and what the consumer wants as well. Like, we all want the McMansion for as cheap as we can possibly get it, and how you do that is by building. Well, probably not even to the code sometimes, but we've got this 6-star system in Canberra that's not means tested, so builders can get away with whatever they want. And the consumer is just happy if they get a nice flash house, which is massive, and you jam a big reverse cycle air conditioning and heating unit in there, and that serves a purpose, and it definitely does. Like, they are nice, comfortable houses. They just cost an absolute fortune to run, and will do so in the future. I wouldn't say that we should mandate passive house in this country. I think that's overreaching, but I think we should certainly be increasing the build standard. Like, you can make some very, very cheap and easy wins for building efficiency that can go a very long way. Certainly when I did this 3-4 years ago, it kind of was almost unheard of. It wasn't as out there as it is now. I think it's certainly starting to come about. The name is starting to get out there. I think unfortunately sometimes you see some bad cases of passive house out there. Some people promising it and not achieving it, and that's no good either. Yeah. We need to have good stories out there. We need to have builders who are saying that they'll build a passive house and actually do build a passive house. And that will come in time. That will come with experience and good tradesmen, honest tradesmen. I'd love to see it popping up particularly in a climate like Canberra. And that, even with my house, like, we've learnt so much, particularly around the summer part of it. Like, winter's a no-brainer. It's just like set and forget. You don't worry about it. It just self-sustaining, does everything. You don't need to turn the heater on. Like, we might turn the heater on a number of times, like on one hand in a winter period, and that's because we have very young children and might get to 19 degrees and like, well, it's a little bit chilly. Yeah. Turn the heater on. Whereas like, if you're an adult, you might put a small, like a light jumper on or something. Summer is definitely different. You get, well, it seems like we're getting just hotter and hotter summers here, and certainly the bushfires. Like, you could do a whole question on the bushfires, but summer is brutal in this country, and it doesn't matter how good your house is. If it's a week straight of 40 degrees plus, it's going to get in. So you need that air conditioning unit. Some nights in Canberra there's no wind and it doesn't get down to 21, 22